The people like me, I'm a Putin poodle and a sadist, and I mean, because we take resolute positions against U.S. imperialism, knee-jerk imperialism, but it's we haven't changed. The so-called left is the one that's changed. They have become social imperialists.
What do you mean by that?
Basically, they have aligned themselves with the interests of the U.S. ruling class, the U.S. bourgeoisie. They support U.S. imperialist policies. They believe, even if they don't understand it or don't acknowledge it, they believe in a benevolent empire. I mean, the very notion that a state and a project would find itself in the crosshairs of U.S. Policy, U.S. subversive policy, should generate opposition from left forces. But instead, the president of Peru is in prison. And where's the left in the U.S.? Where's the left protesting against the fact that not only did the Biden administration not condemn that, but they are sending 750 U.S. troops to stabilize the regime. And we have to continually fight off this year-long process that the U.S. has been involved in trying to identify a force that will lead an armed intervention into Haiti. And the way they have framed that whole situation in Haiti is these wild black folks who just need some intervention and to be disciplined. Where is the left? Where are the liberals on these kinds of notions? Where's self-determination there for the Haitian people? So this is the kind of madness that has now become almost normalized in the U.S. And you see the article that came out in the New York Times yesterday, where they talked about the problematic issue of so many Ukrainian soldiers having these Nazi tags and stuff on their uniforms, and it was playing into Russian propaganda. Well, maybe these are real Nazis, and maybe it's not an exaggeration that you have elements in Ukraine that for years, even in the U.S. press, were identified as problematic because of their ultra-nationalism, because of their Nazi sympathies. There may be, it's not just propaganda where we say that there are elements in that regime that cannot be supported because they are illegitimate. And that when the Ukrainians attack their own citizens in eastern Ukraine, after they engineered the coup in 2014, that the U.S. people should have been on the side of the Eastern Ukrainians if they would have known about it and understood it. But instead, the U.S. Ruling class, who has an interest in undermining the Russians and undermining Ukraine, because Ukraine is basically finished. There's no Ukrainian state any longer. It's an army now that's being decimated. But between the Poles who are now making moves in Western Ukraine, and the fact that Ukraine cannot pay its debts back to the U.S., and the Russians have now carved out a third of the country, anything that may exist that may be called a Ukrainian state would be a rump state. This is a consequence of U.S. policy, not the Russians. This falls on the U.S.
And here's that article you were talking about, by the way. Nazi symbols on Ukraine's front lines highlight thorny issues of history. Troops' use of patches bearing Nazi emblems risks fueling Russian propaganda and spreading imagery that the West has spent a half century trying to eliminate. That's an interesting way to frame actual Nazi images as furthering Russian propaganda as opposed to being reality. Not that all Ukrainians are Nazis, but there are Nazis there. Yeah,
exactly. In the U.S. press from 2014 forward until the conflict, there were numerous stories about these problematic elements in Ukraine.
Right.
But then it got to a point, if you reminded the population and reminded the press of those facts, that you became a Russian propagandist. It's absolutely, it's insane.
Yeah, and all these places they used to call, I mean, I like to say that they obviously, these Azov battalion members must have read white fragility. They must have taken some anti-racist courses and received some sensitivity training, because they're no longer called neo-Nazis. They're called like nationalists by the same media that
Exactly.
called them neo-Nazis. Now they've been rehabilitated.
The same playbook that happened in Syria, where basically you transform the
Right.
jihadists into
Moderate
Syrian
rebels,
nationalists,
or
moderate
freedom
rebels.
fighters. Yeah,
Yes,
exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that was interesting. I love the idea that they're what is the exact quote, that they risk um fueling Russian propaganda. It's like, are they trying to? It's almost like they're speaking directly to Ukrainians wearing Nazi emblems and being like, "Don't do that, guys. Stop. You're embarrassing us."
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.